Hello everyone and welcome to another incredible game from round 5 of this year's US Chess Championship. It is Hans Niemann versus Levon Aronian, and we've seen Fabi's game against Andrew Tang. Fabi is still in the lead, but this game is also very important for the standings, which we will discuss after we check out the game. So once again we are reminded that Levon Aronian is, I believe, physically incapable of playing a boring game. Whenever he plays, it's like he plays bughouse chess. Pieces are just all over the board and you have to calculate every move for your life. So let's check it out. And also, if there are any fans of MMA, what do you think about the upcoming fight between Islam and Volkanovski with Charles Oliveira stepping out? Do you like whose chances do you like? And also, what do you think of the first fight? I'm very much looking forward to it, so very much interested if you have any thoughts on that. But okay, getting back to the game, Hans has the white pieces and he opens with pawn to e4. Levon replies with c5. He goes for the Sicilian defense, knight f3, e6, and now pawn to c3. Again, the Alapin variation. We have pawn to d5, and now, e captures on d5 is the most common move here, but Hans goes for the advanced variation. We have d4, not allowing Hans to solidify with d4 himself, so d4, and now even pawn to d3. Bishop to d3 and captures on d4 are a bit more played, but d3 here by Hans, and now Levon just goes knight to e7, signaling that he's very much interested in putting his knight on f5, and since Hans will probably not be developing the bishop to d3 or e2, he's gonna go g3, so it's very unlikely that he will be able to kick away the knight with g4. All in all, Levon can even push h5 to stop g4 for good. So g3, and now there is a game where bishop to d7 was played, but here we have d captures on c3, and already as of move 6, we have a completely new game. B captures on c3, we have bishop to d7, and now bishop to g2. Hans has finkered his bishop, puts it on this beautiful long diagonal, and he is now ready to castle. We have bishop to b5, Levon hones in on that d3 weakness, and pawn to c4. Obviously, a preparation by Hans. There's no way you'd allow this hold to exist on d4 if you didn't think this was good. On the other hand, you do get some nice squares for your knight. The knight is coming to e4, in the future might even end up on d6. So bishop to c6, now ready to counter the bishop on g2, and now castles. We have knight to f5, of course this square belongs to the knight. We have bishop to b2, and now bishop to e7, queen to e2, and now pawn to h5, stopping any g4 ideas that Hans might have, and this is now officially a monster knight. Knight b to d2, the knight is coming to e4, and now Levon really has to make a decision. Now, I was very much interested in this position because it's basically the cross point of this entire game, and I've allowed, as usual, the engine to crunch the numbers to around the depth 50, and the engine says that you should play bishop to a4, knight to c6 as you freed up the square for the knight, and go for queen to a5. So the game should be on the queen side, because if you're not gonna attack the king with something like h4 and g5, white will probably try to grab hold of the queen, so he does have the strong bishop. He will put the rooks here, and this is where the game should be. But like I said, it is impossible for Levon to play a boring game, and Levon plays goes for pawn to h4. Now, okay, you could prepare with g5. Levon says nope, not a problem, and now he asks Hans what to do here. Now, Hans has a couple of options here. He went for knight to e4, but there's also a very interesting option of executing g4, because now it's possible. However, it's a very long and dangerous line, which I believe impossible to calculate for a human. h3, g captures on f5, h captures on g2. Okay, you attack the rook, white moves the rook. Now e captures on f5, and now pawn to d4. And now look at this, c captures on d4, knight captures on d4, and bishop to c5. And if you look at the black's bishop pair, if you look at the rook here, the queen has access to g5. This doesn't look like something that should be okay for white, but the engine says that, no, this is actually perfectly fine for white. And the reason, okay, you don't capture on f5 right away and allow queen to g5, you actually put the knight on f3, take away the g and h4 squares from the black queen, and now you are ready to capture on f5. And if for example, bishop captures on f3, you will play queen captures on f3. And now if queen to h4, you will simply capture on g2. And, for an engine, this is perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with this. But of course, we are humans. So after pawn to h4, Hans went for knight to e4. And okay, H captures on G3. You could also prepare, you could go bishop captures on E4 first, but Levon goes for H captures on G3. F captures, now even giving the rook the semi-open F file, and now bishop captures on E4. We have queen captures on E4, now putting pressure on that B7 pawn, and just knight to C6. Pawn to G4 now, kicking away the knight. Knight F to D4, and now even bishop captures on D4. With your pawn on E5, this doesn't look like it's going to be a game where the bishop will be relevant. So he gives it up. Bishop captures. We have C captures, and now rook A to B1. So this is what Levon got out of the position for attacking Hans's king. He will now have to deal with some weaknesses on the queen side. We have queen to C7, and now pawn to G5. Pushing on the king side, we have pawn to G6, and now even pawn to H4. And here, again, Levon has to figure out how to play this, but it's not easy, as you have so much pressure here on that B7 pawn. Also, the rooks will probably be doubled on the B file. If the knight moves, if you push B6, the knight might also become a little bit weak, so you have a lot of problems here to tackle. So Levon figures that he has the pawn on D4, and he wants to play bishop to B4, bishop to D2, and bishop to E3, and go for a kingside attack against Hans. And that's exactly what he does. He plays bishop to B4. And now, what do you think about this position? Can you capture on D4? It looks like maybe it would be possible with something like knight captures on D4. The problem is bishop to C5, and you're just going to lose material and end the game. So here, Hans finds a very nice plan. Knight to H2. Now, if he can land knight to F6 check, well, this is good as over. So here, Levon decides to castle, and now rook to B3. We have bishop to D2 by Levon, so he will allow a queenside attack against his king, but he will also get a kingside attack against Hans's king. Rook F to B1, and now bishop to E3 with check. We have king to F1, and now the problem is you can't really stop the rooks. You can no longer play B6 because the knight would just hang, and if you play something like queen captures on E5, then rook captures on B7 comes. If queen captures on E4, just bishop captures on E4. The knight is hanging, the rooks are excellently placed here on the 7th rank. There's just no good way to handle this. This is dead lost for black. So Levon had a different idea. He plays B6 and he sacrifices the knight on C6, stops Hans's attack on the B file, and now he will try to checkmate Hans with all of his forces on the king side. He does have the great bishop here. The rooks are coming into the game on the H file. This is, I mean, absolutely thrilling. So Hans accepts the challenge. Queen captures on C6. Queen captures, bishop captures, and now rook captures on H4. Now the knight here is hanging, so knight to F3, and now rook to G4. Now the other rook is coming to H8 and then to H1. And how can Hans play this? Now, if he can open up the C file, or rather play C5 and open up the B file, then it should be very good for him. The problem is he's too slow. If he plays C5, rook to H8, and C captures on B6, it's a matter of rook to H1 with check, king to E2, and the rook to G2 will be checkmate. So he has to figure out a way out of this mating net. So he plays rook to E1. Of course, he's already up material, and you don't want to be up too much material. If you can give a little back just to survive the attack, then that's exactly what you should do. Levon does go for rook to H8, and Hans is now forced to give up the rook. Rook captures on E3, D captures, and king to E2. So now Hans still has a bishop and knight for a rook, but rook to H3. Now, of course, if you capture right away, then rook can capture on G5 as the knight is pinned, and Levon will create a passed G pawn. So bishop to E4, here after rook to H3, bishop to E4 by Hans, and now rook to G2 with check, king captures, and now rook captures on G5. So Levon does get the passed G pawn, king to F2 unpinning, and now rook to G4. We have rook to A3. Here, Hans should also consider C5. C5 just opens up the position, and after captures, now the rook is immediately in the game, but he goes for a different line. He plays rook to A3. Now, with excellent control over the light squares with the bishop, he wants to control the A7 pawn, and he wants to bring the knight over to C6 and either checkmate the black king or win a lot of material. So how can Levon counter this? King B8, of course, first you have to defend the pawn. Rook to a6, and now pawn to g5. He starts pushing as, well, that's pretty much the only thing he can do now. And again, while c5 is an option, Hans goes for the immediate knight to d4. Now, the idea is, of course, you want to deliver knight to c6 check and start collecting. So rook to f4 with check, king to e2, and now rook to h2 with check. We have king e3, rook h3 check, king to d2, and rook h2 check. We have king to c3, and here, believe it or not, Levon played rook captures on e4. And the reason why he did this is because if you start pushing with the g4, then knight to c6 check, king to c8, or it doesn't really matter what. If you go here, you get checkmated. None of the moves are really okay for you. King to c8, knight captures on a7 check, king to d8, and rook captures on b6. You could capture on a2. Okay, you can eliminate this pawn. Rook to b8 with check, king to c7, and now rook to b7 check. Let's say king to d8, and now you will play bishop to c6, and you are checkmating black. There's no way out of this. Black either has to give up more material, or if he starts pushing, then you get knight to b5, and now you have control over these two squares. That's pretty much it. Pawn to g2, rook to b8 with check, only move king e7, and rook to e8 will be checkmate. So the problem for Levon is that he's just not in time to start pushing the g-pawn. So he plays rook captures on e4. It's the only way to continue. D captures, and now pawn to g4. Maybe the rook can handle the knight defending the pawn, but there's also another piece defending against the passed pawn, and that is the white king. So king to d3. And now, again, if you start pushing, king to d3 already sorted at knight to e2, and once you play g2, there's king to e3, and once you prepare the queenie with rook to h1, king to f2 stops the pawn, and g1 is controlled twice by the king and by the knight. So after king to d3, rook to f2 was played, and now comes king to e3. We have rook to f1, king to e2, rook to f4 going after the e4 pawn. And now if you don't want to repeat the position, you have to try something else. Hans plays rook to a3. Rook captures on e4 check, king to d3, and now rook to rook back to e1. Of course, you cannot capture on e5. You run into a fork with knight to c6 check, so very unfortunate for Levon. He goes back, rook to e1, and now we have knight to e2. And this now covers the g3 square, but also covers the queening square, that is the g1 square. So time for Levon to activate the king. King b7, king to d2 now. Attacks the rook, rook to a1, and now knight to c1, trying to box in the black rook. So if you allow it, the rook will be captured. Rook to b1, trying to escape, and now not even king to c2, because then you allow rook to b4, rook to g3. Going after Levon's only counterplay, it is a much more precise. Rook b2 check, king to c3, rook to f2, and now rook captures on g4. We have pawn to a5. Now comes pawn to a4, stopping any advancement black might have on the queen side. Rook to f1, attacking the knight, knight to d3. We have rook to a1 going after the pawn. Now comes rook to f4, trading the a pawn for the f7 pawn. So rook captures on a4. Rook first one check was given. Rook to a3 with check. King to d4, and now rook captures on a4. Rook captures on f7 with check. King to c8, and now knight to f4, going after the e6 pawn. b5, it's, I mean, you have to play this, create two connected passed pawns. Knight captures on e6. Rook captures on c4 with check, and king to d5. So now Hans does have the Levon does have the two connected passed pawns, but Hans has a king, knight, and rook in front of Levon's king, and also the passed e-pawn is ready to start marching forward. So pawn to a4, and of course rook to a7, just putting the rook behind the passed pawn. Rook to c1, and now comes knight to d4. And believe it or not, it was in this position on move 63 that Levon Aronian resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. You cannot advance the pawns, you cannot push this pawn, you cannot push this pawn. It's pointless to continue this. And one way you could continue, as I know you guys like it when I show how the game might end, rook to d1, is just to advance the e6 pawn. And now if king to d8, you can even play king to e5. And now, okay, you can't go rook to e1 check because king d6, and then the black king just gets checkmated, so you have to play something like a3, but white does not have to take the pawn. Of course, white will go for checkmate. Knight c6 check, king to c8, you will play pawn to e7 check, and now, okay, a few more checks. Rook e1 check, king to d6, rook to d1 check, king to c5, and after rook to c1 check, king to b6, now threatening checkmate, you will have to take the knight, captures, and now after king to b8, of course, a few more moves, and that's it. You go here or you go here, doesn't really matter. matter. You will get checkmated. We don't even need a queen. A rook will suffice for the job. But after knight to d4, Levon said, all right, I've had enough. You win this game. So yeah, like I said, it can all be traced back to that very, very cool position where Levon decided to execute h4. I mean, this is only move 13, where you could decide, okay, the center isn't really moving. White will not be playing d4 anytime soon. We have a very sufficient control. White will not be playing on the king side as white castle king side, and we control the g4 square. So maybe it's time to, you know, continue in a nice, calm fashion. And get the knight into the game, maybe castle queenside, but no, Levon is not that kind of a player. He played pawn to h4, and that's why we got this incredible game that was played to a very high standard by both of them, but in the end, Hans emerged victorious. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Here are the standing. Or first, let me just tell you the results from the final, from the 5th round. So Hans defeated Levon. Schwerch drew his game against Samuel Sevian. Ray Robson defeated Jeffrey Xiong. Then we have Lenier Dominguez Perez defeated Samuel Shankland. Andrew Tang lost to Fabiano Caruana. It's the previous video that I made. If you haven't seen it, brilliant setup against the London system. Do check it out. And Wesley So defeated Abhimanyu Mishra. So these are the standings after 5 rounds. So Fabiano still in the lead with 4 out of 5. Hans trailing by half a point in second place, clear second place with 3.5 out of 5. Then with 3 points, Dominguez Perez and Wesley So. With 2.5 points, we have Sam Shankland, Samuel Sevian, and Abhimanyu Mishra. 2 points out of 5, Levon Aronian, Ray Robson, and Darius Schwerch. And with 1.5 points, Jeffrey Xiong and Andrew Tang. So there you have it. Those are the standings. We'll see what happens if you guys are interested who faces who in round 6. So Caruana will be facing Sevian, Shankland will be facing Schwerch, Mishra, Abhimanyu will be facing Dominguez Perez, Levon will be facing Wesley So. So we have a really an incredible top-level game. Jeffrey Xiong will be facing Hans Niemann, and Andrew Tang will be facing Ray Robson. So there you have it, a little bit about the tournament as well. Hope you enjoyed that. I would like to thank Mr. Hoodie Guy, Petr Marinov, an anonymous person, Roger Stone, and no need to mention me in the video for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions, but mostly covering the US Chess Championship until it finishes. So thank you all. I will see you soon and have an excellent rest of your day. And if you are not receiving notifications from the channel when I upload a video, as some of you have mentioned, I will put a first link in the description below. It's a link to my Telegram channel where you will be informed when the video is released right away. So do join if you find that useful. See you soon.